The ego wants everything to go back to normal, quote unquote. It wants it to look the way the ordinary people see it. It wants to be part of the tribe. And so you can't be different. So anything that would seem to be a little bit out of the norm would not be acceptable to the tribe. By tribe, I mean the people you associate with. And so the ego quickly wants to squash it and make it nothing, because the ego doesn't want to become an outcast from the tribe. So that's a program in the ego. Everybody has it. To be an outcast. In fact, the journey towards awakening to your larger self does involve being willing to look at this program in the ego, the one that absolutely terrified of being an outcast. We remember the fall where we became an outcast from Eden, where God rejected us, and so all that programming replays when the ego thinks that it might be abnormal in some way, rejected by society. It clambers as fast as it can, backpedaling to get back into the straitjacket of the third dimension, so that you won't seem different or ridiculous or as though you're out in the twilight zone. It does a good job of that, and it's subtle. It's got lots of ways that it does that to pull you back.
When I was sitting outside, where I felt, so I was actually also scared of giving it that recognition, because I thought as soon as I do that, then I'm out of it.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And now I saw when I was hanging in there that the emotions came up, and I got a bit of wet eyes, and I felt a bit of emotion, and I thought, well, it's all fine, you know.
Mm.
And it's not that I couldn't care less if it would go. Like I was almost thinking like this too shall pass, but I did think it was very nice, and I actually did wish that it would stay. But I wasn't not so much attached to it anymore. Mm-hmm. This was a way where previously I would have gone out of it.
Yes. Well, the couple of things I could say here, and this applies to everybody because what he said applies to everybody, that you can ask your ego to give permission to allow the recognition of altered states and to be willing to incorporate that into its repertoire. And the other thing is to just be accepting when they pass, because our different states of consciousness are passing through us all the time. And if you try to hold on to any of them, it creates a spin. So you let it come and you let it go. If you know that the ego's given permission for that, it'll come back. You'll go in there again. Eventually, it's not a random thing that happens. You learn how to actually create those states quite consciously. And you can say, okay, now I'm going to go into samadhi, and you can do it. Because you've learned what the pathways in the subtle bodies are. Where do I open this and I open this and I bring in this flow, and it creates this kind of effect. But in the beginning, it's enough to just welcome it and let it be there until it goes away, and then, thank it and let it pass. So the exercise this morning, as far as I'm concerned, in asking you to speak, is for you to really see how your consciousness is fluctuating and changing, and with your witness be able to recognize that in the moment that it's happening. And there'll be states that are uncomfortable, and then there'll be states that are expanded and beautiful. And it's all okay. It's really a question of realizing that you're not in the same state all the time, and being okay with that. To not think that you have a constant state of awareness. To not think that it's fixed or rigidly the same all the time. I say that because the ego tends to think that it is the same all the time. It tends to think that it's in a continuous state of awareness that doesn't change that much, and that it, the ego itself, doesn't change. But in fact, it's a constantly changing and fluctuating state. And that's as it should be. And being able to recognize and even perhaps name the different states that you pass through, and also begin to realize how you got them, allows your awareness to go deeper and deeper into the reality of who you are. So being conscious of it all is important. And thank you for sharing. It was good to hear what you had to say, and love the states that you go into and allow them to shift and change, and understand that these rarefied states that we've been in these last few days, you can cultivate them, you can bring them on, you can choose them and find ways to put yourself into them. And I strongly recommend that you do that, because it uplifts your spirit, it uplifts your heart, it uplifts your day-to-day life. It'll even uplift your work. If you're in one of these states when you do healing on somebody, you transmit the state to the person you're working on, and they experience healing. They find themselves in the same state. They'll walk out of there thinking, wow, that was great, So as we recognize the positive or expanded and transcendent states that we're in, we become capable of communicating them to other people who desperately need them. I mean, the world is like a hell world out there nowadays. For me, it's a hell world. It would not appear perhaps to other people, but the spin is like a hell world to me. So, because I know what it does to people. It makes them dysfunctional, really. They think they need to spin to become more functional, and actually they become less functional. So it's an issue. And the healers and teachers of this world are having to confront this issue. So, good. Anyone else? Yes.
When we were meditating today, I started sort of straight away concentrating on the area where we spoke about yesterday, this crown, opening the crown chakra, and I've maybe because we did it yesterday, I felt lifted into here very quickly, and I almost felt like lifting and floating, and there was a huge amount of energy around here that I could actually feel, and it was also like flaming but not burning.
Mm-hmm.
And as Hans just expressed, in the so-called world out there, you would kind of think this is ridiculous, but it's so real when it happens. And if we can just
accept it,
that's what I experienced, and not think that it is weird, so to speak. So yeah.
You don't have to tell anybody.
No, you just have to be very careful who you tell.
Exactly.
And
but acknowledge it to yourself.
Yeah.
We're learning ascension here, and ascension really means the journey up through the chakras into unity with the divine, through the crown. And it's not everybody's journey, so you're right, you be very careful who you tell. But don't ever disparage it yourself.
It's at least very lovely to be able to speak about it here. I think it's a wonderful place to.
It's important that we gather like this and have communion with like-minded souls. It's very important. In fact, the yogis always say, if you want to wake up, if you want to become a holy person, you keep the company of the holy. And that reinforces your state for you and lets you see that there are alternative realities from the one that the average person lives in. Without being willing to accept alternative realities, how can you ever ascend into them? If there's a part of you that just denies it, puts it down or pushes it away when it comes to you, which it does, these different states come to people. I have people saying to me, well, I was just sitting at the bus stop, and this state came over me and it made me scared and I shut it off. And it's like God is trying to get through to us all the time. And we're so antsy and nervous and declining all the time to have any variation occur in what we think is us. And it's sad. It's a loss. It's actually a terrible loss. I wouldn't say that to the person, but the more you do that, of course, they stop coming. But the divine is soliciting us all the time to see whether we're available. And if you reject it 2 or 3 times, it stops happening. So it's really important to be welcoming, to have an adventurous spirit in terms of the journey of consciousness. You must have an adventurous spirit and allow that to be receptive to the soliciting of spirit to transformation for experiences. Yes.
What you're actually saying is that on the way we have stages of repression all the way. Referring to a level at the persona level, we reject our shadow, and as you grow, you reject your centaur level, your whatever. And when you get to the transpersonal levels, you, in fact, reject your unity consciousness.
Yes.
And the minute that you realize that you actually you see this subject-object thing, and the minute you realize that, you get such a shock, because you realize this is it. And I think that is what Hans was referring to. The minute you actually become the experience and not the experiencer, you bridge the gap. You bridge the gap. And that's what happened to me. It was not a bird singing there. I was actually feeling. And I got such a fright. I thought, okay, here it is, and it's the same thing. Yeah, you reject it.
It makes me so sad to think of people rejecting that amazing experience of unity. Yes, Lola.
It occurred to me this morning sitting here how earlier on I went through a whole lamentation about my disconnection, and sitting here I just remembered those years and years and years of being in the Great Lent. This is the time, Passion Tide and Great Lent now. But those psalms all came back to me. You know, those really heavy psalms about disconnection. I'm like a dry twig in the parched desert, you know, very dramatic. And it just came to me how that programming has undermined and strengthened the disconnection. You know, maybe those were dark times when people felt disconnected, but now, in these times where just life is buzzing, it's not appropriate anymore, you know, to go through those kind of dark times.
That's the shadow coming up. The person who wrote the song about the dry twig in the desert, in the parched desert, was probably in a Pluto transit when they wrote the song. But yes, every year on your birthday, your crown is directly lined up, and if you choose to let it in, you can experience the Christ consciousness. And then 6 months later, your half birthday comes along, and your crown chakra is as far away from that connection as it can be, and you experience your deepest shadow. And both of them are powerful times, but in a different way. If you understand that your birthday is a time to reach for the unity, to let it in and feel the connection, and your half birthday is a time for plumbing down into the depth of your shadow and releasing some of it. Instead of what happens is most people get depressed around the time of their half birthday, but they don't realize it's because it's their half birthday.
So this continuous cycle is actually necessary, but it mustn't look the same. It must actually be...
No, it's different. In this world, we cycle through transitory states that are different. The secret is in learning how to work with them, recognizing what they are. As Yet said, our shadow comes to us and we reject it. And then the unity consciousness comes to us and we reject it. In the interests of trying to be stable and hold our consciousness the same all the time, instead of realizing that we are cyclical beings, we live in an ebb and flow of light and dark, and learning to love that, learning to receive the light when it's offered, and receive the dark when it's offered, and work with it. Work with the light in realizing that you're in an altered state, a transcendent state that is unity, and then recognizing that you've dived down into the shadow. The story of Demeter and Persephone. Demeter was the earth mother goddess in Greece, an ancient goddess. Her daughter Persephone was captured by Pluto and taken to the underworld for 6 months of the year. And then she came back to her mother in the summertime. So the Greeks interpreted that as summer and winter, or dark and light. And you can look at it in terms of shadow and unity, separation and unity, shadow and light. It's each of us embodies that essence of Persephone, who cycles through. Her birthday and her half birthday would be another way of looking at it.
But that was a time of mourning.
Yes, because in this world we're caught in the death processing. We have the death programming to deal with. But you can't fight it and hate it. You work with it and you love it. The middle of February rolls around and that's my half birthday. And I remember when I was younger, I would just sort of mope around the house and wonder why I was always depressed in February. But then some wonderful person told me that, oh, that's my half birthday. And suddenly it made sense, and I started using that time to let myself die to my old ways, So now February is an important time for me. I always go through a huge transition. Just did, in fact. I was on the Wild Coast when I had my half birthday, and I went down into the depths. Brad knows, that's why I look at him. He has to listen to it all because I talk about it and I tell him about it and we process it and so on. And I went through a huge shift. I fasted and just shifted enormous amount. So it becomes a power time for me. It's not just a time when I'm miserable and wishing it would go away, hating it. It's a time that I embrace and use it for transformation. And that likewise, if you have a Pluto transit, so, most people rush off to the doctor to get Prozac when they have a Pluto transit. But the truth is, it's time to get down and really accept you've got a shadow instead of being in denial of it. And Pluto's relentless. You can't, maybe Prozac makes a slight dent in it, but Pluto will just eat you up. You can't fight that Plutonian energy. You have to surrender and go with it. And it will show you the places where you're stuck. And you release them and you fly free. It's beautiful. So we are in cycles. We must accept them. The problem, the reason people turn to Prozac instead of facing their Plutonian passages in life is because they can't balance it out with transcendent experiences. We live in a sort of a flatline reality. You want the whole year to be, the same.
The level to which you experience the hell realms, is that kind of equal to the experiences of bliss?
It should be, yes. In fact, Sri Aurobindo said, you can only go as high as you're willing to go low. Only by doing the shadow work can you access the transcendent. I'm sure that's why the guides had us do a venting the day before we did the transcendent exercise, so that you would be a little lighter and have more liftoff in the meditation yesterday.
It sounds like earning your way to grace as well.
No, it's not. It's just breaking the limited bounds of the ego. It's not earning anything.
Because this polarity came through in the martyr square.
Mm-hmm.
You have to suffer in order to experience.
Well, that is the original sin program. So as long as you still have some of that in you, it's still operating. But you have to. It's punishment and reward. That's the original sin program. And the thing is that when that is in us, we still do that punishment and reward to ourselves. It's not the divine doing it to us. We do it to ourselves. But it's actually an illusion. It's a program. The whole original sin thing is a program. So, and until it's gone, you have to more or less work within the framework that it offers. But at some point it'll be gone. It's really exploring all the hells and the heavens. That's what the journey to enlightenment is. You go into the realms of light and you go into the realms of darkness. The hells and the heavens they are. And you explore them. And when you've got to the extreme ends of each of them and seen that they are illusion, the realms of light are illusion too, as are the realms of darkness. Then you begin to allow the presence of the unity, what the Buddhists call clear light, or the one mind. It's got so many names. That state of unity consciousness becomes you, because you allow it to become permanent. The human ego is running from the hell worlds and running towards the heavens all the time with our pain and pleasure polarity. Can you see that? When you stop that spin between pain and pleasure, and your fear of the hell worlds or the darkness, and your attachment to pleasure or, positivity, when you stop doing that, you will realize that the presence of the divine is that unity consciousness. And it's a very simple state. And you'll begin to allow it. You won't be chasing rainbows or running from shadows anymore. You'll just be. And the heavens and the hells are still there. They don't go away. But you take your unified state and continue your exploration further and further and further down into the darkness, and further and further and further up, so to speak, into the light. You're exploring the cosmos. You're exploring creation, notwithstanding the fact that creation is an illusion. And you know that. But you do it anyway, because what else is there to do? That's eternal life. But once the unity consciousness is there, I suppose you could just sit and stare at the wall all day long. Or you could teach. Because there's nothing else to do. I suppose you could go home to the oneness and just rest there, but that gets boring after a while. We seek life. And when we've had our fill of life as it is in this world, for instance, we go to another one. And when we've had it with that one, or all of them, we seek eternal life, or we seek unity. Then we take our unity from one world to another and play in those worlds. One of the ways of playing is to teach people, to awaken others. That was the one I chose. You can choose anything you like when you have the unity consciousness. My feeling was I wanted to share it. It's so wonderful, I wanted to share it with others. But it's been, 17 or 18 years I've been teaching, and I realized that there aren't that many people who are desperate to have it. And so I sometimes wonder if I've wasted my time. But then what does that mean? There's nothing else to do. So you do whatever you think, whatever inspires you to do. So teaching inspired me, so that's what I chose to do. I love giving people an experience of the transcendent and helping them to cope with their hell worlds. And sometimes I get sick of it too. Because people just want to have fun. It's funny, that song, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, was haunting me. Ever since we came to South Africa, when we were staying at the Wild Coast, they had like piped music into the dining room, and every morning we would listen to Cyndi Lauper singing Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And then you'd go in the supermarket and they'd have the same piped music, and there would be Cyndi Lauper singing Girls Just Want to Have Fun. I'm thinking, I don't know any girls like that. Oh my. So, oddly enough, I want to play you a relatively short piece of rock music. I was having a discussion with my daughter. We were lamenting the state of the United States. And she said, Mom, there's some really interesting music happening. It's all in a rock format, but the words are very, very interesting. You'll be surprised to learn that the young people are questioning things, and that they are communicating through their songs to one another, much the way that young people did in the 1960s when they didn't like the system. So I said, well, okay, can you play some of it for me? So she made this CD for me. And this one is the one that I think is the most interesting of all. It's sort of a hip-hop rap thing, so you've got to listen to the words. I don't know how clearly it'll come through the speaker, but anyway, let's try. Thank you. I thought it was an astounding song, actually. We're in such a mess in the U.S. right now, and the kids just get it. It's helpful to know that. She said, "Don't get so depressed, Mom. There are young people who see through all of this." And she played it first in her car for me, and I just cried. So. Mm-hmm. So love, the reason I know that the song would push you a bit, but breaks your heart, in fact. I wanted to talk about the love again, because it is the love that allows you, gives you the strength to walk through the world that he's describing in the song, and survive it, and be strong, and to cope with it, and to be unscathed. Doesn't mean you don't see the iniquities that are being perpetrated around you. It doesn't mean that you live in an ivory tower or a fool's paradise, deluding yourself that everything's okay. It means that you see it all, but you stay in love. And the awakening of the upper chakras, starting here with the fourth dimension, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and even up here into the eighth and beyond, you are totally a seer. You see everything, but you understand the levels of your seeing, and so it doesn't overwhelm you. You see that the 3D ego is going crazy right now. It's driven by greed and emptiness. Inside every 3D person there's a deprived child. That's why we keep looking at the deprived and wounded child. But inside everyone is a deprived child. And the deprivation of that child drives it as an adult to become greedy and self-serving, and that's what's happening. The greed, the money-driven, he called it, but it's greed, and greed is driven by survival, and survival is the death programming that the deprived child feels inside of itself. And the only antidote to this is the awakening to love. The world is not going to change unless enough people move into the heart and hold the love place. And everyone, including yourselves, on a spiritual path understands how spirit can change things. Spirit changes us. Spirit can change other people. Spirit can change the world. We must embody spirit. And the place where we need to reach for is the heart. We need to find the love that is in us, that we are. We need to learn to live lovingly. Spiritual people understand that they must live the spiritual principles, but average people don't. They don't even live the 10 Commandments. They don't even follow the teachings of Jesus. They may be carrying a banner for Jesus, and calling everyone else who isn't born again Satanist. But are they living the teachings of Jesus? No. The born-again Christians don't seem to be, from what I can see. They're much more interested in the rapture and in getting themselves, all the born-again, into power. They're going to take a fall of some sort at some point. They're breaking a lot of the spiritual laws. So, but that's their problem, not ours. One has to live according to spiritual law. And then you're not driven by your deprived child. And so the places in you where your deprived child does try to run the show, you must root those out. You must find them, recognize them, and root them out, so that you're not part of the problem. You become part of the solution. So that's our work. And as I said, every time one of you makes a shift, it changes the whole equation. You don't have to wake up to change the equation. Just make a shift. If you make one shift a month, however small, it makes a difference. But it's the love. It's the love that allows you to have compassion for people who are running their deprived child, and to see that that's the problem, and to not be part of the problem. It's your heart that will pull you up out of your deprived child. It's your caring for the world that will make you follow the spiritual principles. It's your love of the divine, and your love, just love, period, is the divine in you. That is what changes the equation. And loving starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with each one of us. The deprived child is out there in the world fishing for love, looking for it. And money is a substitute for love. Power is a substitute for love. Pleasure is a substitute for love. Material things are substitutes for love. If only there could be a recognition that what we all really want is love, it might change things. But even then, when you become aware that you are looking for love, then you have to go through a transition where you realize that looking outside of yourself for fulfillment, to fill the empty place in that deprived child, isn't the way to go. Because there's nothing worldly that can fill that hole that's in the deprived child. Only by changing the programming, by opening your own heart, finding your own capacity to love, rather than looking for love from someone else in some form or another, will you ever find a way to fill the hole of the deprived child. Your own heart has the capacity to heal you, is what I'm saying. Your own heart. You must look and cultivate your heart.
Can you do that with affirmations?
Well, we'll get there.
Okay.
You can't say, as he does, where is the love? He looks around and sees, where the hell is the love? It's true, it's not easy to see. But he's got to look to his own heart. He's got to say, I won't be a perpetrator. I will be a healer. And that's the choice that we each have to make. And so the choice to cultivate the heart is the first step. You don't have to know how to do it. You just have to say, yes, I'll do it. And ask the divine to show you the way into that.